Thank you, Amy, and good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the first panel discussion of the Appeals Court's 50th anniversary celebration, looking back and looking forward. I'm Greg Massing. I joined the court a little over 8 years ago, and I have to say this. Seeing Judge Brown in the front row there brings up, as a former prosecutor who argued some closing argument cases, we get a little nervous there. But my first argument ever was 28 years ago, and Justice Brown was sitting in the middle. So. Just a second, Justice Link. So I'm also the co-chair, along with my distinguished colleague, Justice Kenneth Desmond, of the Appeals Court's Standing Committee on Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, which was launched last year. And as such, Ken and I were asked to moderate this first panel, which we hope might touch on some of those issues. So now I'm going to turn it over to Ken to briefly introduce the panelists and get our conversation going.
And so we only have an hour and 15 minutes, so I don't have time to go through the full bios of our esteemed panelists. So I'm going to share with you a very truncated bio of each, beginning with Justice Barbara Lank. Justice Lank graduated from Fordham, Yale, and then Harvard Law School. She worked at Brown Rudnick until she was appointed to the Superior Court in 1993. She joined the Appeals Court in 1995 and was elevated to the SJC in 2011, and she retired in 2020. Justice David Mills graduated from Boston College and Boston College Law School. After clerking for Judge Bounds of the District Court of New Hampshire, he became an assistant district attorney and later an assistant attorney general. After some time in private practice, he joined the court in 2001 and retired in 2012. Justice Diana Maldonado graduated from the State University of New York at Stony Brook and Northeastern University School of Law. After clerking for our very own Justice Brown on the Appeals Court, she became a public defender. She was appointed to the District Court in 1999 and became the first Justice of the Chelsea District Court in 2009. She joined the court in 2013 and retired in 2020. Justice Suk-Young Shin graduated from Brown University and Harvard Law School. After working in private practice at Kirkland & Ellis in Washington, D.C., she became an assistant attorney general, serving in its administrative law division for 11 years. She joined the court in 2016. And finally, last but not least, Justice Sabita Singh graduated from Penn State in the Boston University School of Law. She worked as an assistant district attorney in Middlesex County and then joined Bingham & Cutchin before becoming an assistant U.S. attorney. She was appointed to the district court in 2006 and joined the appeals court in 2017. How about just a brief round of applause for our esteemed panel? Yeah. I think we'll begin our discussion, and I'm hopeful that we'll ask some questions to the justices, and if any other judges want to kind of weigh in, feel free to join any of the conversations as we move along. So I'd like to begin with you, Justice Lank, if you don't mind. I was curious, what was the appeals court like when you started, and what was it like when you left? In particular, did you notice any cultural changes over those series of years?
Yeah. Well, what it was like when I joined was a court of 14 people, 14 people with too much work to do. Never got it done. Never really caught up. Couldn't possibly do it. Work kept coming out. You know, I've always had a tendency to walk into a place where I was desperate. It's desperate for help, which is why they appoint. The situation was terrible. It's terrible. That was when Warner was still Chief Justice, but Armstrong was doing most of the work. I think that he was making a noble effort, that Judge Warner was, to keep the court on an even path, but it was very hard because that was also the period of time when the building was very sick. You know, we had the what was it called? Oh, some substance that they put on the outside of the building to make it waterproof instead of faded. What's that?
Asbestos?
No, it wasn't asbestos. It was like waterproof. It was waterproof, the building. Anyway, so there was all the building pretty much were emptied out, and we were trying to find alternate places to be. Right. So for me, I didn't really get to know people that well while I was I like a kid. I wasn't about to endanger myself that way. Because the people, first twice I came to the office, I had been signed in Boston, and twice I had to leave because of terrible headaches, and it was just terrible, terrible, terrible. Anyhow, so I think everybody though was very close. The other people who remained were very close. They decided they were going to take their chances with the building in the shape it was in, or what. But I don't think that there was a move made to relocate to the appeals court or the SJC for that matter. I don't think. But I still feel that there's a terrible workload and a need for real leadership in getting us out of the building. I still think that the people who were on the court at the time were remarkable people, like Rudy Cass and Charlotte Peretta. Really was, and I'm forgetting her name. Raya Zobel, not Zobel. Raya Drebin. That's right, Raya Drebin. And they really were quite remarkable people. I think they all had a pretty close relationship too. Those are people who were very friendly. They didn't have been on the court before 14. Originally was because they was 6 or 7. How many were on the court originally? 7, I think, including Chief Justice. Anyway, and so when I left, of course, it was after 25. And I've been a number for a while, and the court was changing a lot because it had to. Because you had 25 judges; they're going to all come in with different points of view on different things, and I think there was a lot of skirmishes, which Chief Justice Armstrong really took care of, I think, very nicely, without getting the whole court up and at him, up in arms. I think that he was a wonderful Chief Justice, and I will never forget the day that I think it was Rudy Cass came by. They asked me to sign a letter that everybody else had already signed, saying that none of us were going to run for it. We wanted it to be Chris Armstrong, and he was appointed immediately. Wonderful, wonderful thing. Anyway, how I left the court in 2011 was a different court. We didn't have the kind of workload. Everybody was caught up. Wonderful. I was able to take off most of the summer. And when, yeah, I can't think of anything more specific than that. Okay.
All right. Okay. So I think we'll bring in Justice Mills into the conversation. Who it's a challenge, a little bit of a challenge hearing on using the Zoom, but we'll try to muddle through. So, David, you were one of the last expansion judges, and so like you'd also talk a little bit about what it was like coming to the court. One of the focuses we had here is you came as a land use expert, but that might have not played out exactly as you might have thought. So just love to hear some of your impressions on arriving here and what it was like.
Sure, Greg, thank you. And I hope you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I have to thank you, Greg, and especially Joe Stanton and Tom Carter for making my participation possible today. My balance is off. I fell last Sunday, so I couldn't be there personally. And it is so important for me to feel reconnected. I pinched myself at the very thought of applying to that court. When I ever ended up walking into, well, of course, at that time, we walked into Pemberton Square, the big tall building, and I sat next to Phil Raposa and Joe Grasso. And I still, I look at this courtroom now and I think, oh my heavens, I still pinch myself. How could I have ended up here with this bunch of people in a job that is like second to none? I was not an expert on anything. I was fostered through the system from day one. In the DA's office by Ruth Abrams, in the AG's office by Ruth Abrams and John Irwin. And there was actually nothing as a B-, C+ student that I ever did without help. And of course, that followed through to my law clerks and to Rose Marie, who covered my back together for 11 beautiful, wonderful years. But coming there, it was a very scary thing. People said, did you always want to be a judge? And I said, well, listen, I don't like to make people squirm. But growing up as a closeted gay kid in Danvers, and then throughout my college and law school, still terrified of what my feelings were and how I would ever going to fix things, I never thought about being a judge. My principal concern was remaining out of Danvers State Hospital, avoiding a lobotomy, and avoiding chemical castration, which is what happened to young gay people. Now I'm 80. I can say whatever I want. I can feel whatever I want. I can be as public with my truth as you will tolerate. But suffice it to say, I never, ever, ever in my wildest dreams ever expected Riot Rep to bring me flowers on my first day, for John Mason and Ellie Cipher to call me after I was nominated, and after I was confirmed, but before I was sworn in. The welcome that I received at 81, at 80 years old, I can still get choked up from the support and the indescribable affirmation. I don't know if anybody can hear me.
Oh, yeah, we hear you.
Oh, good. Okay. As far as being an expert,
You're getting us all to cheer up. You're getting us all to cheer up along with you.
what happened now?
I said, you're getting us all to cheer up along with you. So.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I see.
In any event, it was nothing that I ever hoped for. I was not a specialist. I came from private practice to the appeals court. Wow. And how that ever happened. I was sitting in the room when the Judicial Nominating Commission was evaluating other people for the job I got pushed forward for. And they were so far more qualified than I was. But in any event, getting to that court with the camaraderie, with the welcome, with the wealth of, I mean, to have people like Rudy Cass and Fred Brown and Barbara Lank, to have Chris Armstrong as a chief, I don't know how I could fail. And the fact of the matter is, at least up to this day, I don't think that I have failed, and it's because of that support. So that's what I wanted to say about coming to the greatest court in the Commonwealth and in the country. Thanks for listening.
Well, thank you. We appreciate your service and your candor. Judge Maldonado, maybe we can turn to you next.
That's going to be hard to follow, though.
You came out of law school and clerked for Judge Fred Brown. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about how that came to be, and then speak to your time here at the appeals court and how you've gone full circle from law clerk to judge on the appeals court.
So I went through the regular process. It wasn't online back then. You got your resume and writing sample and sent it in to Alex McNeil, and you get called, or I later find out that they sift through them, or he sifts through them and passes those along to whichever ones that make the cut to the judges. I didn't know that back then. I just know that at some point I got an interview with Justice Edith Fine. And we sat, we talked. I thought the interview really went well, but maybe not so well. I don't know, but because I didn't hear back from Justice Edith Fine. And then I was home for Thanksgiving, and the phone rings, and it's Alex McNeil. And he tells me, my father tells me this appeals court is calling, and I got all excited. And I thought, oh, maybe she changed her mind. And I get on the phone, and Alex McNeil tells me, I have a job offer for you. And I'm like, yeah, with Justice Frederick Brown. And I was shocked. I hadn't interviewed with him, but I now know through the process that the judges talk, and sometimes, as it's happened to some of the law clerks that I've hired, that the judges made the justices interview several and may pick one of the candidates, but then turn around and say, look, I talked to someone that I think is exciting or good or whatever she said. He decided to hire me on the spot without interviewing me, and I will be forever grateful. That year was one of the most, I think Justice Mills said it when he said, feeling like you're, one of the few, the same thing with being a law clerk on the second highest court of the Commonwealth, to knowing all the applicants come from all over the country, a lot of law schools in Massachusetts, and they come from everywhere, and to be finally sifted down to be a law clerk to one of back then 14 judges on the second highest court of the Commonwealth, I felt like I had, I don't know how to explain it. I won the big prize, and it was like I was among the best of the best. And I didn't feel like I was the best of the best. I was just lucky. I was just absolutely lucky and happy to be there and learn from one of the greatest.
Awesome. And so talk a little bit about once you got here as a judge and working with your law clerk.
So it's funny because one of the questions asked when I when I was interviewed by Governor Patrick was like, what was one of the reasons for you to go to the appeals court? Because I had been at that time like 15 years on the district court, and I was the first justice of, Chelsea, so I had my own little fiefdom, right? And I said, at that point, Justice Brown was on recall. And so he was still on the court, and I said, it would give me no greater pleasure than to actually sit and be a colleague to the judge that was my first legal mentor in my legal career. And I was not only so fortunate to be able to come work with him, but I had two fabulous, a lot of sittings are memorable, but the two that absolutely stand out, and one of the ones that stand out was when I sat and got to sit for the first time, now as a colleague, with my first legal mentor, Justice Frederick Brown.
Nice. And then finally, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you, what was the experience like going from first justice of Chelsea District Court to the collaborative judicial making of the appeals court?
So it's both good and bad, I would say. When you're making your own decisions, you're making your own decisions. You don't have to argue with anyone. You have to, you don't feel like it's yours. And so it's kind of hard when you come onto a court where you think this is the way it should go, and you got two other people saying, and like fighting back and forth. And in some ways, it's like you become a little bit of an advocate again, because you have to now, not only are you judging, but you're advocating with your colleagues about what's the right result, both fair, just, and within the legal bounds. So there's a transition of having to do that give and take, that as a judge of a single court, a trial court judge, there is no give and take. You call the shots, all of them, and you don't have to explain it to anybody. In fact, you don't even have to explain it to the appeals court. This is the decision, let them figure out why. So there's that, and then there was also the fact that, because it's so many cases coming at you, like you might have 2 or 3 motions to suppress or, summary judgment motion. You don't have to get into the minutia. You don't have to get into the details. I remember there was one case back then that came out from, I think it was the SJC, it reminded me of a TV show because it was like, just the facts, Daniel, just the facts. Like, I don't have to tell you the law. I don't have to research it. Just give you the facts. That's what I'm supposed to be. I'm a judge of facts. And so I was like, this is great because I don't have time to rush to the library after every case. So there was this feeling like I can make the decision. It's really easy to just say, no material issues was just disputed fact. Bam, you figure out the rest. But so there was an ability to just make a decision and move on. Whereas in the appeals court, you're not just make a decision, you move on. You're getting into the fine details and really researching and making sure it's right. Like I remember coming onto this court and I think it was, and I'm sure it was Justice Granger and it was Mitch, and there was a back and forth argument about the use of a semicolon. And I'm talking back and forth. And so I said, okay, welcome to the appeals court. So there was that. There was the idea that now you really are making sure that you get it as right as possible. It's not just calling the shots, it's doing your best. And that's where the beauty of the panel and the other 25 justices come in. Because, a trial judge, you make it, you call it, you move on. Here, you're working really hard. You're relying on everyone else to help you when you're not sure where you're headed. And trust me, as a district court judge, there were lots of times that I wish I had 3 heads. There was lots of times that I wish I had a panel or someone else to confer with. But you don't have that ability that easily because everyone's in their own courtroom and you're just moving on. So the idea that now I knew that my decisions were supported by my colleagues, that I knew that they were helping me make sure I got that semicolon right, or whatever it may be, like that was remarkable. And it truly was, although initially a little hard to take, it truly was a wonderful experience to end my career in a place that was so collaborative. And not that we didn't have our disputes, he certainly did. That's what the dissent or concurrences came in. But even in those, I mean, I had cases where even in the dissents, I've had the other party helping me better my dissent. And that's truly amazing that there's that collaboration, that the court is trying to get it right in a way that all of us have something to add. And so I felt like now, I had 3 and 25 heads most of the time. And once I got that, the transition from a trial judge to an appeals court judge was easy.
That's great.
I've just got to pick up on that very last comment, because we did have that experience of working on a case where it was Judge Rubin and I were the majority and Diana was the dissent. And when it went to second panel, she got all 22 other votes. So.
But he helped me write the dissent. He did the first draft. I'll be honest. He wrote the first draft.
I heard you say that you got selected by luck by Judge Brown to be his law clerk, and I think it's clear to all of us that Judge Brown saw something in that resume that maybe you didn't even see in yourself. And so I don't think it was luck at all.
Thank you.
And you certainly left your mark here at the appeals court.
Thank you. I just want to add something. Justice Mills talked about how welcoming the court was, and I want to say it must be something that each and every one of us experienced. I mean, it's not like when during the trial as the judge, the district court, that it wasn't welcoming. It absolutely was welcoming. People, you met them and they were nice to you, but it wasn't coming all at you at the same time from the moment get nominated. To me, it was just such a difference that they were following along. And the minute I was nominated, the slew of emails that came to me, congratulating me, anything I can help with the next process, and just encouraging along. There was support came even before you even on the court. And then walking through the door and getting chocolates from Ariane, and notes from others like welcome. And it was a big difference. The welcoming, you could see the support and the collaboration from even before you enter the court.
And here I am thinking I was the only one Mary bought a plant to when I first started.
I'm feeling a little left out. So thank you, Justice Maldonado. And so as everybody in this room knows, we do things here in order of seniority. So the next question is for Judge Shin. And I wanted to ask you to talk a little bit about your transition here from the ad law division in the AG's office to arriving at this court, and maybe particularly touching on being young, female, and a woman of color coming here.
Sure. So I think for most of us who make the transition directly from practice to the appeals court, we usually have experience in either civil or criminal. It's really rare to find an attorney nominee who has substantial experience in both areas, except maybe for Judge Nyman. Contrary to popular belief, Judge Nyman is older than the appeals court. So in my case, I practiced for a long time in a very specialized area of law, administrative law, which is more exciting than it sounds. So when I came here, I really had to learn criminal law from the ground up. And I think that's the case for most attorneys who come directly here. And so I do think there's a disadvantage, initially at least, with respect to my colleagues who came from, say, a court like the Superior Court or the District Court, where you get a good mix of civil criminal. That said, I think it's really important to have specialties on the court because we all talk to each other and we learn from each other. But there were some challenges I had initially with the substantive work, but my real challenge, I would say, was psychological. And since we're being candid here today, I had a serious case of imposter syndrome for probably at least a year, maybe 2 years, maybe even just a little bit right now. And I think it was a combination of a lot of things. So first of all, when I started, I had argued before over half of the judges who were then on the court. So it was odd to be behind that lectern, appearing before these people who were deciding my fate. And then suddenly they're all my colleagues. So that was pretty surreal. It was also the combination of being the youngest person on the court. I'm still the youngest person on the court. Probably for not much longer, so I'll relish in it while I can. Being a woman and being a person of color. So not too long ago, I was at, I think it was a law clerk event, and someone asked me, how are you treated differently because you're a woman of color? I gotta say, that really, really stumped me. And the reason it did is that I had to really think back on my experiences and distinguish between what was perceived and what was real. And so when I did that, I decided some of it was definitely perceived. I struggled with imposter syndrome, I think, my entire career throughout my practice. And a large part of it was simply just walking into a courtroom, looking younger than everyone, and looking different than everybody. And I had no concrete signs that anybody was treating me differently or thinking of me differently. But when you look different, that you feel different. And so in that sense, I think a lot of it is perceived. Some of it is definitely real. So one example are those attorneys who come in and make eye contact only with the male judges on the panel, even when I'm the one who asked the question. When that happens to me, my strategy is to stare at them intensely until they look at me. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So that's one example, and luckily I think that's pretty rare. But the starkest real example, and Judge Singh is very familiar with this story. I think it was my second year in the court. It was early on. I sat with Judge Singh and Judge Peter Agnes on a panel. And a few days before the argument, one of the attorneys decides to call the clerk's office. And he gets someone on the phone, and he says, I had an oral argument before Judge Agnes, Judge Shin, and Judge Singh. Judge Agnes, I know. Judge Shin and Judge Singh, are they native English speakers? So the poor person who took the call had no idea what to say. And I see Lena Long over there. I wish Lena had picked up the phone, honestly. So I show up to the day of argument and I relay this story to Judge Agnes and Judge Singh. And Judge Agnes, I've never seen him that mad before. He demanded to know which attorney it was, and luckily for the attorney, I didn't know. But Judge Agnes was furious because, you know, he's Peter Agnes, he's wonderful. But my reaction and Judge Singh's reaction, I think I would describe more as, meh. And speaking just for myself, the reason for that is I think at some point in my life, long ago, I decided I need to distinguish between remarks that come from malice and those that come from lack of experience. And I put this in the latter category. A few years ago, I went to a banquet where they were honoring Judge Richard Chin, who was the first Asian American judge in Massachusetts. Here's some of the things he was subjected to, both before and after he became a judge, was really shocking to me. And maybe I shouldn't have been shocked, but I was. But, you know, Judge Chin was nominated in the 90s, and I was naive enough to think in the 90s we were past that, which we clearly were not. And then tomorrow we're hearing from some of the first women judges, and, you know, some of their stories shock me as well. So I'm acutely aware that the experiences of those judges have made my path that much easier. So going back to this attorney, I mean, wasn't the best behavior. But, you know, I think about him, I think here's someone who obviously has some level of discomfort with appearing before a judge who looks like me. And so, to the title of the panel, looking forward, I hope that the composition of the courts reaches a point where maybe I'm not so unusual anymore, and the fine people in our clerk's office won't have to take those kinds of calls again.
I can only hope.
Thank you.
So, Justice Singh, so you clerked in the Superior Court, and then you worked also as an assistant U.S. attorney in the federal courts prior to becoming a district court judge. Did any of those experiences prepare you particularly for this job? And if so, which ones? And which ones really didn't give you any real background to come into the collaborative judicial decision-making and shine such as you do?
I think I'd have to say that it's the combination of all of them, and that's what they always talk about, having the background in the criminal and the civil and the federal and the state and the prosecution and defense. But when I think back to my work on the district court, I was 10 years on the district court bench. And then when I applied to the appeals court, I remember thinking it's a very hard sell for somebody from the district court to go directly to the appeals court on the, you know, with the idea of the type of practice in the district court, right? You have a 5-minute, you know, bail argument or bail hearing. Then you have a 10-minute restraining order. You might have an hour suppression hearing, and you might do an entire jury trial in one day. That's including impanelment and jury deliberation, you know, so sort of the fast pace of things. So I remember thinking what a hard sell that was, and so to justify why my 10 years just previously before the appeals court, why would I be a good fit? And so I would go back to we have the appellate division of the district court, and although it hears only civil appeals, it does operate pretty much like the appeals court does, with 3 judge panels meeting every month. You know, so that's what I relied on in my years in the district court to say, well, that's what I got from the district court, the appellate division experience that I bring to the appeals court. But really reflecting back on it, I think it more was the day-to-day work of the district court. It's such an incredible variety of cases that you hear, like you do in the appeals court. We take appeals from, all the different trial courts. But most importantly for me, in the district court, you deal with many unrepresented people. So you are not you're generally hearing from individuals directly about their problems, their issues. It's not filtered through a lawyer making representations. And so when you make a decision, you're not handing it off to a clerk to deliver the news. You are usually looking directly into the eyes of the people whose lives you are affecting by your decision. And having to do that day in and day out for all those decisions, you don't forget that. And when you come to the appeals court and you're making these other types of decisions with your colleagues, I think you really bring that. You always remember those, having to look directly into someone's eyes and making that decision. So whatever you're writing, whatever input you give to your colleagues, you bring those kinds of things with you. We were asked to sort of reflect on the appeals court, but when I reflect on the appeals court 50 years, I've only been on this court for 5 years, but my experience with the appeals court goes back more than 30 years. And that's when I first came out of law school. And after doing a clerkship, I worked with the Middlesex District Attorney's Office in their appeals unit. So pretty much fresh out of school, coming to the appeals court, doing appeals day in and day out. And I remember my most vivid memories of the appeals court, it was not the judges. I was not one of those sophisticated people who researched the judges. I didn't know who I was appearing before. I didn't care to look. I was just going to do my job, appear in front of them. So it wasn't the judges so much. And in fact, I remember thinking that it was probably a really boring job, just sitting all day and listening to people, So I was not really attracted by the judges there. And I don't remember so much about even going into court and arguing. My most vivid memories are the deadlines. The constant deadlines, the constant stress of thinking I'm not going to be able to make the deadline, and then trying to get that extension, and then the next extension, and then thinking, will they finally deny me this time? The constant, our office was in Cambridge, we would jump on the train in Leechmere, get over to Government Center, get on that elevator up to the tall building, try to get your briefs in, thinking maybe you can slip it under the door if the office was shut. I remember, those are the most vivid memories of the appeals court back then. But what I always remember and appreciate is we were mostly dealing with people from the clerk's office. And they were so kind and they were so reassuring. I mean, they were the ones who had to deliver the news, whether you got that extension or not, and they were the enforcers. But at the same time, I remember coming in so stressed about, getting my documents in. You're representing an elected district attorney. All of these things run through your mind. And they would always be there saying, slow down. Slow down. Life is good. It's not the end of the world, and everything will be okay. And so reflecting back and thinking now that I'm on the court and I have other dealings with the clerk's office, that has not changed. That has not changed at all. I hear that from everyone. Their experiences with the clerk's office, they're the most helpful people. They help people who are really struggling. They've been through a trial. They thought they'd get their justice there. They were wronged. They need to get vindicated. It's going to be here. But at this point, all the money that they've spent already, they're dealing with all of those issues, and the time, and the people. What I've heard across the board is that the people from the clerk's office are really the best, and I'm very happy to every time I hear that I'm working in this office that really gives public service such a good name.
How can we not applaud Joe Stanton and his team after that?
Yes, Joe, you too.
So I'm the way I'm seated, I actually have a good view of the our Zoom participants, and it's very awkward to have this hybrid thing, but I want to give the two of you a chance if there's anything you want to respond to that you heard there that that sounds rings true to you.
Go ahead, David. Go ahead, David.
No, okay. I just continue to I'm 10 years out of the court, and yeah, I'm just being reminded today of how much I miss, not just the dignity of the court and what that means professionally, but the quality of the people that I was able to connect with every single day. I live alone out in Danvers. I have a new dog in March, but otherwise now I have two dogs. Lots of friends, but I never had a community quite as rich as the community that I felt there. And I feel it again today. And I listen, of course, to these people who are so more qualified with their backgrounds than I was. But then again, I'm the lucky one, and I got it too. And and I've got a pension. It's not as big as the one you'll get, but it's a pension. And Greg, it just reminds me of how privileged I feel, and thank you for including me today. This has been so sweet.
Yes, and I would say just ditto to everything that he just said, because it's easier to do it that way. It was a wonderful 16 years for me. I think it was 16 years I was on the appeals court, 16 years. And it's hard to leave. I never really left the appeals court, I don't think, because I used to be able to take experiences I had in the appeals court in 16 years. It formed me as a judge, as an appellate judge anyway. And it was a wonderful, wonderful place when it was, there was Christopher Armstrong and Judge Raposa were chiefs when I was there. Wonderful to have people that you learn from, just so fantastically cooperative. And so even if you're disagreeing at loggerheads, you disagree about the way something should be done, everyone spoke to each other politely. You didn't have these slamming kinds of dissents, or it was different. It was very likable. I really enjoyed serving on the court, and I'm grateful too. And my father-in-law used to say, "It's better to be lucky than smart anyway." Better to be both. Lucky is better than smart. Yeah.
Thank you, Barbara. So, people sitting here, you don't have to be asked to speak if you want to jump in too. Okay, well.
So I'm going to ask you, Judge Singh, after those experiences with the appeals court as a practitioner, what was the appeal to the appeals court when you applied? See what I did
there? I think it's going back to those first experiences, the first experiences that I had with the Middlesex DA's office, really, seeing the names in the book, there's always this push and pull of, sometimes you want to do things, on the world stage, and sometimes you want to do something just for your community. And I felt like my work was just like, sometimes I wanted to do the everyday work to help people in the now and present, and sometimes you want to do things that are going to have the long lasting sort of effect, more the style of the appeals court.
Judge Mills, I'd like to ask you, as the first openly gay man on the appeals court, maybe the only openly gay man ever on the appeals court, did you feel any special pressure serving on the court?
I remember saying, I was sitting at a lunch with Phil Raposa before he was chief, and I mentioned, we were talking, I said, well, I guess I'm the I'm the only gay judge on the court. He said, openly gay judge. And I looked around. I think Phil's in the courtroom saying, Phil, I'm still the only gay judge in the court. Okay? No, it was, Judge Dermot Maha was the first gay judge appointed by Judge Dukakis in 1989. And he experienced some nastiness. I never, ever, ever heard a single word from anybody in the court, in the process, anything about the fact that I was gay. Now, I never dyed my hair, okay? And I never put a rainbow flag on my car. I guess I was known as gay because I think of a case in the SJC, which was when Mayor Menino signed an executive order so that non-heterosexual people could get health insurance. That was challenged. It went to the SJC, and I had been hired because I was acceptable to the straight community and the gay. In any event, the short answer is I never had anything but affirmation. The day that I got nominated, I get a call from Ellie Cipher assuring me that she never had any attack going through the governor's council hearing. This was, when I was nominated, but before I went to the governor's council. And I remember the day that I got to the court, and Judge Drebin had flowers on my desk, and never. I'll tell you two things, and I'll shut up. The day the gay marriage case came out, Cowan was walking down the corridor and I was walking in the other direction. And he had a copy of God, do I miss him? He had a copy of the gay marriage decision in his hand. He looked at me and he said, "You know, Mills?" I said, "What is that, Bill?" He said, "You don't have to worry about anything because you're too ugly. Nobody will ever marry you." And the other thing is, there was another, some nearly 15 or 18 years ago, the Massachusetts Bar Association was giving an award to a state representative who had done a lot for the judiciary, but had also taken an anti-gay stance on something. And Susan Beck called and asked if she could come down and speak to me. And I said, "Of course you can." She says, "It's a private matter." I thought she was coming down to either come out to me as a gay woman or tell me one of her kids was. But she said, I want to go to the Mass Bar Association tonight to the dinner, but I will not go if that will be offensive to you. And I said, wow. No, it was the depth of support that I felt. Never did I ever feel a single negative aspect. One last thing. Before I was put on the court, I used to do a little television show on Boston Cable, which nobody watched anyway. But it was an LGBT call-in talk show, and I had guests. I had judges. I had Mayor Menino. I had the Commissioner of Public Safety. It was a great little show. And I asked if I could continue to do that show. And Jim McHugh at the time was like the traffic cop for good taste and decor. So I went and I explained to Jim that I'd like to continue that show. I can't tell you what he said to me, but he said, "Are you out of this? Is not exactly. Are you out of your mind?"
Yes.
He said, of course you can do it if you're crazy enough. Well, that was all I needed. So those were the three instances of my gay reality as a judge. Thank you for asking.
We applaud your courage and your service for sure.
Well, I think soon we'll be opening it up to your questions, so formulate your questions. There's one here that some people wanted us to ask, which is, and I'll open it up to everybody, which is, it sounds like it's a good job being here as a judge on the appeals court. What advice would you have for someone who would hope to become a judge? And I think there's some people in the audience who are young enough and might actually have that hope.
Nice. Okay, well, I'll start.
Please do.
Don't be a jerk when you're dealing with people. Don't be a jerk.
Good advice for everything in life.
Yeah.
they'll remember it. You know, people remember you, but a lot better than you remember them. I remember after I was nominated for this was the appeals court. Somebody came around and said to me, "Oh, you did this and this and this and this, and this for me," and I really wanted to never thank you. And I thought, my gosh, I remember who this guy was. I wasn't a jerk, I guess. Yeah. So, I think people who feel like they were badly treated by you in one way or another as a lawyer will remember it when they see your paper in the Lawyers Weekly, your name in the Lawyers Weekly. They come forward. They come forward to the they're not ethical problems, but they're just the way you do things, the style of which you do things. I think that some people can get very arrogant. Some people can be very very screamy kinds of judges, and I think it's very good to recognize that it's better not to do that.
I have some thoughts. Are you done, Barbara?
I am.
Yeah, I have some thoughts. I do a little mentoring with students out at Boston College now, and when I have private discussions with the students, they want to know what they should take for courses next year because they want to design their future today. And I don't think that can be done. I just said everything that's good is going to happen to you by accident. However, if you can have government service as a trial attorney, if you can work in the DA's office or with the United States Attorney, if you can do public service, and if you can not be a jerk, the rest may fall in place and it may not, and I don't think you can design it and make it happen.
That's right.
Thank you.
I find it odd when I get a lot of young attorneys asking me, like, what do I need to do to be a judge? And so I echo that same thing. Like, to me, like, right now, as a young attorney, what you need to do is be the best attorney you can be. And that's what's going to get you to be the judge. So not thinking down, like, what's going to get me to be a judge? What's going to get me to be the best that I can be in the field that I choose, that I've chosen, and working really hard at that. And that's the way you distinguish yourself. The legal community is a really small community, really small community. It may seem like a lot, but everybody talks, everybody knows each other. And so your reputation is key, and you get a reputation for being good at what you do. As adversary doesn't mean antagonistic. So being a really good adversary, but also being respectful of others, and being out there in the community. I think that's the advice I would give. But I would certainly say that's not let's not think about the end game. I didn't start my career thinking about when I'm going to retire. You started thinking about, like, what am I want to do now? What's the case in front of me? How am I going to work that? How hard am I going to work that? So to me, that's really it. I mean, you're working the best you can do at the case with what's right in front of you.
Any other thoughts on that topic?
Burn bridges. I guess I feel a little differently about planning ahead. I think you should plan ahead, not microscopically, but for instance, if you want to be a trial judge, if that's your goal down the road, you don't have any trial experience, it's probably not going to go all that well for you. And then don't be afraid to try.
That's true.
One of the other questions that somebody had submitted and wanted us to ask was, having a mentor is so important. Were there any particular special people in your lives that either encouraged you to become a judge or felt kind of motivated you to go on and do great things that without them pushing you or without them in your life, perhaps you may not have taken the path that you have?
I've had mentors in every single position that I've had. I mean, I don't think you get anywhere without, having someone that who's come before you that's done some of the work that you can ask questions to that pushes and encourages. Like, I started out as a paralegal in JCPenney legal department in New York, and I didn't think that I was capable of getting into law school. I didn't think I was law school material at the time, and which is why I didn't apply right out of law school, right out of finishing college. And while I was there was a Christmas party that I took my my parents to, and my parents always wanted me to be a lawyer. Thought that I'd be a lawyer from when I was young. So I guess because I said I argued a lot at home. But so they go to this, they come to this thing, and there was the only African-American lawyer in this corporate office there, and he approaches by the way, my father was construction carpenter type, so he approached my father, and he said, I really think she should go to law school. And my father said, if I have a hammer, I've been trying to hammer that into her head since she was born. So when I heard those words, I thought, oh, here's someone doing this work who thinks I can. And that was the first time for me that I went to him and said, what do I do? And he, helped, said, get the application and whatever, helped me with my essay, and told me about some programs that would help me find money to pay for law school. So, I applied, and I got into 3 of the schools that I applied to, and I came to Northeastern because they gave me the most money. So, right, I think that, so there was mentors there, and the same thing happened as, so I tell the story about how I got jobs that I didn't apply for when I was in my career. So when I was clerking for Judge Brown, and this thing actually goes to how the appeals court can, the trajectory of the appeals court can help propel one's career. So and to illustrate this fact, I'm going to tell a little story about being in law school. So I was at Northeastern. They had this program. I did the whole year. I did the summer work, and I was going to go in for an internship. The way you did it, you put 10-minute resumes into a thing. You put out how many applications, what places you want to apply to, and then you wait for the pink notices on the bulletin board if you've gotten an interview. So the first 2 weeks go by, everybody's getting interviews here and there, and I wasn't getting any interviews. So I was like, okay, time for me to make a new list, submit my other 10 resumes, and when I get into the office to open up my file that should have had no resumes, there were like 3 or 4 resumes in there. So obviously my resume didn't go out to everyone. Now, I don't know if it was because I didn't have the pedigree, because I went to public schools all my life in South Bronx. I went to State University, and at the time, Northeastern was trying to build a reputation with, because back in 1985, with law firms to get people to hire their students. So maybe I didn't have the pedigree, maybe it was a mixture of that and the fact that my name ended in an O. I don't know. All I knew is I needed to get an internship. I wasn't ready to fight that battle. I just needed to put my resume out again. So I put my resume out again, and I got a job in a little law firm in New York. It was criminal defense law firm, kind of a mob lawyer law firm, and that was my passion for criminal defense was built from there. But I compared that to then now my experience clerking for Judge Brown. So I clerked for Judge Brown, and it's November. The bar exam results are out. I don't know this because I'm sitting during an argument, and I'm sitting during this argument. My roommate was working for the State Public Defender's Office, Mass Defenders, now CPCS, whatever. And they had a policy then that if you didn't pass the bar exam first time around, you had to pick up the bags and leave. They had no tolerance for failure. So she was really worried that she wouldn't have a job if she didn't pass. So when she found out that she found out that she had passed, that the bar results were out. She came running up to the appeals court back in the whole high-rise building. She was in juvenile court back in this lobby downstairs, passed way through, and tells one of the court officers that the bar result is out. And so at that point, they pass a note to the judges. The judges tell them to let us know that we can go and get our results. So that's what I did. I go, I find out that I passed the bar exam. We go in Four Seasons, have a glass of champagne, then go to tell her office that she passed. So I'm sitting there, and the person who was arguing the case happens to walk through. It was Richard Zorza. He walks through, and I apologized for having walked out in the middle of his argument. I said, it wasn't your argument, it was that the bar results have come through. And he said, well, did you pass? And I said, yes. So he starts talking to me, blah, 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 blah. He ushers me into this office. Next thing you know, I'm talking to the head of the office, the head of the appeals unit, and we're talking, and I leave there. And a few days later, I get a call asking me giving me a job offer, and I hadn't applied, so it became a big joke that I'm getting jobs that I don't apply for. But that was, to me, a real difference between what happened to me in law school, not having the pedigree for the places I applied to, and here I am, same pedigree, except that I'm working on I'm clerking for the Massachusetts Appeals Court and getting this, offer back in November when, places weren't even looking at people. So I started my career there, and it went from there. I mean, Richard Zorza got me into the job in New York, and so I think that there's always mentors, and so appeals court, Judge Brown got me the trajectory, and I don't think I would have had the same course had I not been one of the few in the Massachusetts Appeals Court.
So before we open it up to the audience, I'm going to ask you one more question, Diana. We've talked a little bit about the history of the appeals court. If we were sitting here 25 years from now, what would your hope for the appeals court be?
I think I echo Judge Shin's remark that there'd be more of us that look like us. When I started on the appeals court, when I came 1985, there was 14 judges, one black male of color, in fact, the only judge of color. When I look at it, when I came on the bench, I was to the appeals court in 2013. I was the first Latino, Hispanic, Latinx, whatever, first person of Spanish background, male or female. And when I look at the court now in 2020, there are 25 judges, not 14. And I am sitting with the sum total of the people of color on this 25-person court, and the sum total of the only black male on this court, just like it was back in 1985. So I would say we've come a long way in many ways, and it's no fault of the appeals court, obviously, because they don't get to pick their candidates, the governors do. But and I know that we've come a long way in many respects, but I do think that we need to really look at how we need to, diversity is important, not just for outsiders looking in and the litigants who come in through these courts, but also for the kind of decisions that we and information we bring from our background, whether it be because we have a district court background or because we're a person of color that may look at something a little differently. I was in an argument with Judge Milky once, and one of the reasons that was given was a termination of parental rights, and one of the lawyers in that case was arguing as one of the reasons why an alternative, the grandmother who the mom was proposing take custody of the child as opposed to DCF, one of the reasons the lawyer argued for not wanting this grandmother to take custody of her grandchild was because she only spoke Spanish. I thought to myself, if that was the test, I wouldn't be sitting here right now because my mother only spoke Spanish. So, and I brought it out to the litigant, and I'm so happy that Judge Mowgli supported me on that, and he blamed it on the judge below, whatever. But the point is that diversity comes in many ways. In 1985, 1920 something, I'm not going to do the math, but this many years later, that there's only one black male and 2 women of color on this court, I think we have a way to go.
Boy, I agree with that.
Questions from the audience?
What are we standing up for? Who are we applauding? Why are we standing? Okay. So this. Okay.
We still have time for questions, right?
Hearing none?
I was just going to say that. Hearing none?
Somebody repeat. I could not hear what was said. What was said? Could somebody tell me what was said, please?
We were asking for any further questions from the audience.
That I heard that. I didn't
And hearing none, I thought we'd conclude a little early. And I think that passed without objection.
I actually met the last speaker, whoever the one said the people applauded for and everything like that. I didn't hear. I don't know about you, Dave. Did you hear that?
We were recognizing Justice Fred Brown in his service as a trailblazer and pioneer here at the appeals court.
Absolutely. I joined in that wholeheartedly. Thank you for telling me that. Thank you for sharing that with me.
And thank you all for being here today.
You're welcome. Very welcome.